do not want to be recorded, it looks like it's recording and then not recording. If you don't want to be recorded, just turn off your video, and that way nobody will be able to see you, or otherwise just be ready to know that if you're participating, you will be recorded. So there is a closed caption option in the bottom middle section of your kind of Zoom dashboard. You should see a box that says CC in it. So if you would like to have closed captioning, that is the way to do that. Okay. All right, and so everybody, I am going to be keeping an eye on the chat. I ask that you use the raised hand function for when we are having discussions, and otherwise, of course, keep yourselves muted if you are not participating. All right. So it's about 9:05. I think we're ready to go. So officially, my name is Nora. I am from Capital Home Care Cooperative in Olympia, Washington. Today, I'm going to be talking about recruiting and retaining millennials, which is a huge subject right now. Some things I just want to throw out there is that if I really want to thank the U.S. Federation and all of our sponsors. We're going to be talking about them at the end for putting on this wonderful conference. It's been really exciting to see all of the amazing work everybody's doing. So without further ado, I just want to make sure everybody knows I'm going to be talking about recruiting and retaining millennials from my vantage point as a home care cooperative worker. So this will be a case study in home care cooperatives, but I do believe that this content really applies to every industry, especially what we're doing. So today I'm going to kind of talk about just what home care is, do a brief intro, talk about who and what are millennials. It's a big button word in our culture right now. I'm going to talk about why we would want to hire millennials and how we at Capital Home Care have worked to attract millennials, and ways that we work to retain those valuable workers. So again, I'm Nora. I'm going to introduce myself as a millennial today. I'm 33. I'm also a caregiver. I've been caregiving since I was in high school. I'm a member owner at our co-op. I'm the executive director of our co-op, so I do a lot of recruitment work. I also like to bake bread. I like to whistle. So that's a little bit about me. Recruitment is kind of an issue right now. That's why I wanted to talk about this today, as illustrated by this kind of funny graphic. It's really easy to see that there's a lot of challenges that we're facing right now, especially in kind of a post and present COVID world. Our workforce has been really hit by COVID in the caregiving world, but I imagine in a lot of our sectors, and we're also just seeing people facing lots and lots of economic hardship, poor pay, terrible hours, bad treatment, all that stuff. And so we're really, how do we paint our jobs as good jobs, especially to people who really need support right now. So just a little about home care. And home care is a really good place to talk about empowering workers and how recruitment is a challenge. Before COVID happened, home care positions in caregiving were not really that attractive. It's typically a job where people make poverty wages. The median income is about like $22,000 a year. There's no benefits. The hours are totally inconsistent. And often it's really oppressive. And so, not many people want a job like that. There's a caregiver shortage right now. So kind of as people are starting to realize that they want valuable jobs, and that they need to support themselves, and maybe they don't want to work in a really scary caregiver position. We are seeing a silver tsunami happening, and I think people have really heard about this. Every day 10,000 people turn 65. There's just a huge gap between the amount of people that need care and the caregivers that we have to offer. And we're really feeling that. We've been predicting it for a few years, but COVID really accelerated that. Another thing that is really true in home care is that we typically have an older workforce. So it's, you don't often find 33-year-olds who open a home care agency. It's usually people who've been doing it for many years, or who are a little older. And then again, I'll just say the COVID-19 impact has been terrible. There was already poverty wages, a caregiver shortage, an older workforce, and COVID means a high risk workforce. People are really putting themselves in danger. And of course, COVID-19 has made these jobs much more dangerous. They used to just be exploitative, but now it's, people are actually putting themselves on the front line of this pandemic. So one thing that I knew, and that I've always known is that there are lots of people like me, younger people, looking for meaningful work. But most home care agencies tend to scare them away from the caregiving field. And that is for obvious reasons, the low hours, the really terrible treatment, both by your clients, your clients can be dangerous, but also if you don't have managers who understand what you're going through. And so you see a really high turnover rate. I think the industry turnover rate is like something like 80%. It's terrible. So at CHC, this is part of why I used my co-op as a case study. We're a little unusual. We're actually a majority millennials. And so, I know that there are other people who would rather have meaningful work, than work at McDonald's. And, part of my engagement with my cooperative has been trying to create a home for people who want this to be their lives and want them to be meaningful jobs. And there are people out there, they're waiting, it's true. So what are millennials? Always a big question. Some myths, I guess, that, but these are things that are popularly said, is that millennials are young, lazy, and entitled. We're often known for our 2-year careers, people who don't commit to the 30-year career, like staying one place forever, no work ethic, no respect, they don't have experience, they're entitled, they demand things from their bosses, we are industry killers. Millennials are known to be industry killers. Like, we kill the paper napkin industry and Applebee's and Blood Diamonds, and so I guess big industries don't love having millennials around. So that's some really hyperbolic nonsense. That's not true. I'd like to correct and just put out some facts that I know about millennials. So millennials aren't actually that young. We're often treated as if we're very young. But the truth is that the millennial generation is technically the generation born between 1981 and 1996. The oldest millennials are around 39 or 40 years old. And when we say millennial, what we mean is younger than 40. So that's not that young. Just putting that out there. Millennials are known for being movers and shakers. So we're known for seeking and finding new and better ways to do things. Like, maybe we killed the paper napkin industry a little bit because we want to save our environment and figure out ways that we won't use disposable, unnecessary tools when we could just use reusables. As a rule, millennials are not cool with accepting the way things have always been. I think, especially in cooperatives, it's kind of almost like a death knell to say, oh, we do this because it's always been done that way. And I know that people that I work with, and this just does seem true of this generation, want to find a better way. And we're known for doing it ourselves. We can learn stuff off of YouTube. We're addicted to our phones. You see a lot of people really self educating, and there's so much information out there. And that's something that our generation really leapt on. And we're an empowered group. I think that a line of conversation for millennials is that we advocate for the rights of our workers. Everybody here is part of a member cooperative, I'm assuming, or interested in supporting them. They want to engage, they want to find meaning in their work, and that's hugely true with home care. Again, I said this earlier, but you don't accept lower wages to do this really hard work unless there's something that like draws you there. And I know that was true for me as a caregiver, is I have value as somebody who can help others. It's a huge part of my identity. And I know that I've met other caregivers who would accept that lower wage to do that meaningful work in their community. And like, honestly, that's what we want in our workplaces. And they advocate for the rights of others. This is something that I have always seen, but it's really our cooperative and the other people who own it. The most vocal that they get is to advocate for the rights of their other coworkers, and that's often how our policies get started. So it's millennials are an empowered group. It's a cool thing. And the millennials are cyborgs. This is actually a big deal. It is true. We are literally attached to our phones. If you don't know what a cyborg is a robot humanoid, hybrid, basically. And it's true. I really believe this. I spend so much time with my phones and my computer, and I know that's absolutely a truth for most millennials, even those of us who have resisted it. And it's an asset. At Capital Home Care, we really had to, in home care, everything was on paper before COVID. And it really helped to have a tech savvy group ready to transition to more virtual settings in order to adapt to COVID. And so it's something to keep in mind is millennials bring this new skill set that is very valuable right now. So why should we recruit them? Um, Younger workers have their advantages. They're flexible. It's just, they typically don't have a ton of kids. They typically are more open to trying out new things and new skill sets. In co-ops, that really means donating your time to your co-op, or, really thinking outside the box. They also attract other younger workers. And this is an adage in the caregiving world: caregivers trust caregivers. And so millennials trust millennials. They also know where to find them. They're open-minded. So millennials tend to be ideal new cooperators. They're more able to learn. They're, again, thinking outside the box. And I'm going to mention it again, they're cyborgs. They bring tech skills and abilities that benefit your business. And this is like, I'm 33. We have a lot of like people in their early 20s at the co-op, and it's like I'm pretty good with tech, but like it's like they speak a different language than me already. And so and it's important to listen. So in caregiving world, this is huge. I don't know how this is true for most industries, but I know it is true in a lot of industrial work too. But on average, caregivers are 49 years or older, but 37% of caregivers are 65 years or older. So it's a huge thing in home care that, it's like this really came up with COVID. A lot of caregivers were high risk, because they fell into that category, and were very scared going to work, but also losing an hourly low wage job position is untenable. So, people were really put in a tough position. Um, it really means home care agencies on the whole are not great. at attracting millennials. And I think this is kind of true for a lot of different industries. You know, there's a new way that we need to be reaching out to people because you know, we're not just living in the newspaper want ads anymore. Um, the caregiver shortage that I described earlier, you know, it will only get worse if we don't get better at attracting millennials. You know, this is the worst time for a huge part of the caregiver workforce to age out. And in terms of recruitment, it's a problem. Um, and we need to hire people who have long-term leadership potential. So this is really important in a co-op is we want somebody who's going to be thinking ahead and creating spaces, you know, for how they can stay in that agency. You know, maybe they don't want to spend 40 years being a caregiver, but they could be leaders, you know, as well as caregivers. And people really, that's very important for us to consider. um, so how do we recruit millennials? You know, we've made a pretty good case for why we should recruit them, especially in the caregiving industry. And recruitment is a big issue, but something that we have that the rest of the industries that we're competing with don't have is we have the cooperative difference. And the cooperative difference does attract millennials. We can sell empowerment, you know, personal growth, professional development. A big thing that we have that other agencies can't offer is hope. You know, maybe when our agencies start, we can't pay that higher wage, or, you know, we can't give out those amazing dividends, but we can offer hope and engagement and working for that better life and better job. And again, you know, we talked about this in terms of, I talked about this in terms of millennials. Um, but millennials really want value, and that's something that co-ops offer. They want that social and moral benefit that comes with being a cooperative, you know. And that's something that we can sell, you know, and we can attract people with. Co-ops have all of those things that millennials are looking for, but how do we tell them and convince them that it's true? You know, that's really the hard part. And I know a lot of people in co-ops like are like, I love the social justice work and please don't make me touch marketing, or doing this stuff. So it's but it's something that we have to do, and because this is a big question, how do we tell them what we're doing? So with millennials, social media, marketing, outreach, and branded virtual presence are key to communicating. And we have this funny looking robot to remind us that millennials are cyborgs. You know, we really do live on our phones. You know, I can apply for jobs on my phones. I can check my taxes with the IRS. I can do my grocery shopping. I can find my next date, you know, and those are things that I do. And that's what we're all doing right now. And we have to adapt with that, you know. And home care is a really great example of an industry that hasn't moved with the times, you know, especially being so dominated by an older workforce. You know, again, we were all on paper before COVID happened, but we really had to rethink outside the box, and that really activated our social media marketing. uh, so millennials do everything on their phones, so we have to think about how we are reaching out to them. You know, ease of accessibility, this is something we talk about in caregiving. It's like an interested caregiver should be able to see a job post and apply to a job from their phone in less than 2 minutes. You know, this for everybody. If you want to attract somebody who's younger than 40, right, the millennials, it's crucial to make it really easy to get to you via the phone. Branding, so engaging your caregivers in marketing opportunities. This is a huge way to get feedback from them on what they find attractive about your co-op's culture. But again, it also engages them in maybe helping you create, you know, and develop your branding, and even helping you with it. And then this is something I've thought about a lot over the past year, and me and our board have been thinking about it too, is engaging the virtual community. So, you know, during COVID, we got really into sharing and putting our ads and stuff and our job posts on like local mutual aid pages or local, socialist pages, or, anywhere that we thought we would have a community voice. There's a difference between putting an ad on your Facebook page and putting it where there's little community bubbles and that's where your caregivers are going to be, the people who are going to see you and say, oh wow, they're doing this cool thing. So we need to be part of that virtual community too, to reach those millennials who are doing everything on their phones. So again, millennials attract millennials. So this is something that is really hard, but we've been working on a lot, is again, engaging those members, having your members similarly post on social media and work to recruit for you, and I know different home care agencies do different things. Like they might have member points, where they have points that go towards patronage if people are doing a certain amount of marketing for them. There's people who I think the boards like pay like a little stipend to people. At CHC, what we do is we have a little budget. A line in our budget that just accrues money if we want to give work to people. And it's like a little slush fund for this purpose. Market your jobs in those millennial hubs. So I said this before, you can still go small and local while connecting with groups and organizations via Facebook, Instagram, and more. Community engagement. So millennials love to engage and will respond to seeing other millennials in the community selling your co-op. An example of this with Capital Home Care, and I'm using COVID examples because COVID really spiked both our recruitment issues and our virtual branding process. But we partnered with South Salish Mighty Masks, which was a group of volunteers that started making masks for caregivers, and they helped us make a joint ad, and so we were both promoting each other's projects, and that really showed a lot of people what we do in a different way. So hone your message. So again, we've been putting a lot of effort into creating consistent branded content. Like here, I'm going to give you some examples of some of our media posts. So I'll just let you take a look at these and think, about what you are learning about us as you see some of our recent posts. This is a really cute little post that we did earlier this year when everyone was doing N95 mask fittings. This is when we all started getting vaccinated. This is the thank you that we posted for South Salish Mighty Masks. They gave us a huge donation of masks, and we posted this everywhere. We have these little little memes and posts that we share frequently, but you can see we're really trying to make it very easy to see us and apply in a lot of different ways. Like we did a job fair. I really love the one on the right. I think it's great. This our old board member Clarissa made this. It's Oprah, so who doesn't love Oprah wearing a Capital Home Care logo? So you can see like it's not all serious and it's not all jobs. We're doing some interesting little things here too. So consider, from looking at a few of our posts, what have you learned about CHC? What stood out to you? We have a few minutes for discussion. So if anybody wants to raise your hands, I would love to hear from folks, or you can put your answers in the chat. All right, I see some comments. I'm not seeing any raised hands, but there is a raised hand function if that's one way you want to participate. Which social media platforms are most effective with millennials? Facebook, Insta, TikTok, Snapchat? I would say all of the above. to that question. And there is a slide where I'm going to show like all pretty much the majority of the social media platforms that we're using right now, and you'll see when I show you that a lot of them are very caregiver focused. All right, and that was Olivia Dwyer. Thank you for that awesome question. From Michael, I'm working with a cooperative who has older membership, leadership, and a younger staff. Do you have any advice on how to bridge the age divide once millennials are hired to a co-op? Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, I think it's, gosh, I really want to think about that for a second. Um, I can say my instinctual answer is maybe seeing if you can invite some millennials into leadership positions or engage them in a decision making process that's really that allows them to participate at that level. uh, and this is, again, it's like in my mind, millennial is almost synonymous with good cooperator. Like, a good cooperator is what we all want, and a great millennial hire is somebody who's going to meet that great cooperator standard. So, I think transparency and engaging is the best way. This is something, and I'll talk about this later too, and I'll make sure not to run on for this answer. It's such a good question. But one thing that me and our care coordinator at CHC are talking about is like having kind of personal improvement meetings, or that maybe I haven't decided on a name yet, but we want to meet with people individually and really ask them what their goals are and make a goals plan for them. So that's like, and it's to answer exactly that question, like how can we make sure there's not just like a linear hire and then go, how do you help people get involved at that deeper level? And I think with millennials it's figuring out like, or younger people figuring out what their skill is and like elevating it. I'm going to keep thinking about that question. It was a really good one. And then Olivia, I see another question. I live in a rural community in New York with aging population. Seeing young caregivers in your marketing is new to me, and their handmade signs tell me they are engaged. Okay, that's not totally a question, but that's awesome. Yes, and that was me and our old recruitment manager, Clarissa, started doing that. And, sometimes we have grants that were given where we're asked to do thank yous. That was the thank you CCHD post that you said. And it's, getting people to do that, it takes a second. Like we just like badgered people and we're like, write this on a sign, take a selfie. But millennials know how to take selfies. And, so I would say there are creative ways to like get those people to help out or do those things. And they'll, if you ask them, a lot of the time you'll be surprised by how many people say yes. That's awesome. And then Michael says, thank you. There's a reluctance among staff to join the membership at this co-op because of the large age barrier, but the idea to offer leadership decision-making positions that might not be ownership itself as a stepping stone is a great idea. Awesome. Awesome. Very cool. This, man, I can tell I would just love talking to you guys in earnest too. So this is a really cool conversation. All right. I'm going to go back, even though people who know me know I could conversate forever. And I'm going to take a quick sip of water. So yeah, as one thing I like to point out too, after looking at all of those, is that, we're not just posting job posts, and we're not just posting ads like for our services. We're also telling a story about ourselves, like with the posts of the caregivers getting their N95 fittings or getting vaccinated, that tells, caregivers that want to be in a safe environment and taking care of during COVID, that's something that we're really prioritizing, if that's the work situation that they want. And it tells clients who are really nervous about whether or not they'll find vaccinated caregivers that we're a safe place to go if that's what they want. And it also shows like our community, like that we have fun together. So, we're telling people our narrative and engaging with them on this level. I'll also point out, you'll notice that our logo and our color scheme, I did this for this presentation kind of on purpose. You kind of get a feel for like our brand, that we're like purple and youthful. So there's a lot of cool like uh accomplishing a lot with just a few simple posts happening. So somebody asked like popular online platforms or social media. So I listed stuff that we use and that we've found useful, and there's like the stuff that most of us have heard of or use: Facebook, Indeed and Monster, Twitter, Instagram, Google Ads, LinkedIn. But I also threw in care.com, and there's Sitter City, and there's a Medicaid registry, and there's like local college job posting sites that we use, or like we post ads. So, there's the popular online platforms, but then there's also like your industry apps and social media things that you might want to look into and see what they are and if they exist and how you can use them. Um, for those people that haven't explored posting and social media platforms a lot, here's just some regular tips. Schedule your posts ahead of time, create a long-term plan. Sitting down and making, a meme or an ad for 2 hours and posting it and boosting it every day is not tenable for most people, whether you're an administrator or a board member. But you can sit down for a few days and like, make a Thanksgiving post and a Labor Day post and a Juneteenth post or whatever you want to make. And you can actually, like, on Facebook and Instagram are, a conglomerate, like tyrannical overlord, and you can actually schedule your posts to go out on both of them. Like, we have like a year of posts scheduled on our Facebook and Instagram right now. That you'll see that we tried to do this with our posts, but be goofy. Millennials love a goofy and relatable post. A lot of our posts are really just like, it's Monday, coffee, like, have a great day, love Capital Home Care, or like, I love Peanuts posts, like, I love that cartoon. Boost your posts. This is a big one. It's just true, if you don't spend money on your posts, especially on Facebook and Instagram and Indeed and Monster, you like, people won't see them. You have to spend money. And so budgeting for virtual presence is huge. I won't talk about them too much, but Google Ads is another overlord. And it's a really, really dangerously expensive thing. You have to throw a lot of money in if you want it to be very useful for you. There are people who know how to optimize that, and they're marketers or consultants that you can get to help you. um, but Google Ads, like, that's a huge marketing platform, but again, very expensive. And then group marketing is cheaper marketing. I throw this out there because I mean, I would assume this is happening in other worker co-op or co-op industries too, but in home care, right now there's certain developers starting like a national secondary cooperative, and part of that is going to be about group marketing. But in Washington, we have like 5 home care co-ops here, so we're starting to take advantage of the fact that, if we all pay for one video rather than all of us making our own videos, and we all market that video all along Western Washington, that's much cheaper for all of us, and we have much more accessibility. So, do you have other co-ops in your region or your state, that do something similar to you, where you can market each other? Are there collectives, that are helping with this? Those are really great resources for this sort of thing, because again, uh, creating a good virtual presence can be very expensive. Uh, so accessing your community, Again, local Facebook book groups. I mentioned like some ones that we have in Olympia, or like Olympia Mutual Aid and like Thurston County Progressives, and there's like an opium listserv that's like a a punk music server, but it's a great place to ask for mutual aid and help, or just like let people know that there are jobs. Make sure you're using hashtags and profile tags, so like in Olympia, Washington, there's lots and lots of hashtags that all the businesses use that can make you more visible. If you're part of your local chamber of commerce, or, part of the US Federation of Worker Co-ops, they probably have hashtags or marketing tools that you could use. Again, listservs, local grassroots orgs. And I'm also going to mention this one for people, again, who are a little new to making virtual posts, like posts for internet advertising. Canva.com is like it's a very useful resource. It's free. You can there's always like an expensive version, but it's free. There's like tens of thousands of free stock images and tools, and you can really make social media specific posts. Like you can click to make a Facebook banner, or click to make an Instagram post, or click to make an Instagram movie, and they have templates. And so it's a really good tool. I used it to make this presentation. So I really like it. I recommend it strongly. Also, if other people have other recommendations, please throw them in the chat, because I'm always looking for more as well. So how do we retain them? Say you've gotten this far, you're sold, you want to hire and uh, uh, submerge in this younger, not the right word, but get with this younger workforce, and you've figured out how to get their attention. You've got really good posts, you've got really good boosted ads, people are noticing you and reaching out. How do you keep those millennials? So this is, I think, just huge in all co-ops. Lead by example and provide opportunities. Like it's easy to sell things. Like if you get into it, if you become a marketer, that's what you're doing. We're selling that we're good cooperators, but we have to prove it. Like I'm just gonna ask. I have a little bit of time. If people want to offer, what are like simple ways that your co-op demonstrates that they're a co-op from the first interview onward? Um, Feel free to answer in the chat box or raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Okay, from Alyssa, what is opium? Is it like Rise Up or more like Discord? Oh my gosh, this is an example of how I'm an older millennial. I just heard of Discord, so I don't actually know what that is yet. But opium, it's like stands for Olympia Punk something. I think it ends with music, but it's a list serve, and it's got like 5,000 plus people. And so you can send out on list serves, you can send out like emails. So I send out email ads, and I use a much more like co-op heavy language, in those types of ads. So that's what that is. Adobe Spark is free and does the same too. I'm an Adobe baby, so just throwing that out there. Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to try to check that out because I'm still learning about things too. Thank you so much, Angela. John McNamara. Unsplash is a great place. Creative Commons license for photos. Just need to provide credit to the artist. Alyssa says thank you. Okay. So and then Courtney says, we make the new member aware of our active communities and their meetings so that they can start learning about the organizational part of our co-op, so they can see where they might fit in when they become an owner. Okay, all right. So like communicating opportunities from the get-go, that's absolutely huge, right? Like if I apply to be a co-op owner and a caregiver, and then the job is just a caregiver, maybe like I love caregiving, but maybe I feel a little suckered in. So making sure people are aware. And Courtney, do you have any specific like tools that you guys use, like newsletters or group emails or surveys? I'm just curious. Typically group emails. Okay. All right. That's perfect. So that's really great. Or texts. Awesome. So before I go back, does anybody else want to share, just one or two, an example of a way that you felt like your co-op let you know that you were a member or member owner? I see no raised hands and no more comments. So I'll move back to the presentation, but I'll check back here in a little bit. So I really do love conversations, so I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. Ah, there we go. So, lead by example and provide value proposition. This is huge, right? If I say, as an administrator or board member or fellow owner, maybe if I say, oh yeah, we got patronage dividends and like democratic vote and all of these amazing things, um, and we really want to hear what everybody has to say. We have to make that true. For me as an administrator, part of that follow through and that example, I think, is often really listening and taking people's advice or their desires into account. Like, don't make a promise you can't follow through on. An example of this at CHC that just happened is we have this really lovely caregiver who just really feels for her clients, and she's got a few clients who don't have local family or friends, and she's worried about them being alone on the holidays. And so she came and she asked me and Sally, our care coordinator, if she could take the clients to her house for Christmas and Thanksgiving. And of course, that's a conflict of interest. We can't really, have our caregivers bring our clients into their personal homes. But what we did was we, reached out to her and we're like, hey, so we can't do this as a conflict of interest, but what if we, create a proposal for the board where we do a holiday drive and we set aside some budget to like buy these guys some gifts and do something nice for them as a volunteer or small wage thing on these holidays. And like she loved that. It led to her like coming to that board meeting, so even though the first answer was no, showing her that hey, I saw that you just came and had this idea, and that's what this is about. Was really, it's demonstrating that democratic process, creating a value proposition. um, like, we want jobs that work for our employees, so like it's really easy to sell like their value proposition for us, but creating so that like some things that are examples at CHC is like, I'll talk about Clarissa in a little bit, but we had this wonderful caregiver, Maddie, and she was really interested in learning about legal stuff, and she got involved in our board and was then able to like learn about writing bylaws, and like because they wanted to rewrite some of our bylaws, and that allowed her to parlay that into a really great resume. She was able to follow her dream and go to law school, so she created a value proposition that we aided with, and that was very much the cooperative element. She didn't learn how to write bylaws from the caregiving job. Engaging the millennial skill set, like, and this again, value proposition, following through on what people want from their jobs or want to give to their jobs, with the millennials skill set, like people bring so many skills to the table, so we want to give them an opportunity to use them. Like maybe you have younger people, to that question Michael asked, maybe you have a bunch of new younger people who are really much more comfortable with stuff like making the newsletter, and so you engage them in helping you create a better newsletter template, and you give them the content that engages them with so much, or a lot of millennials really love to volunteer. This is just something we've seen, so at CHC, we would create tabling opportunities and ask people to sign up to table. And so the caregivers would like go hang out outside the co-op, where like we all see each other, and they would talk about our co-op with people and talk about it with other co-ops, so there's so many ways to engage people and find what they're good at and help them do it. And embrace complaints. I think this is kind of just a huge part of leading by example and value proposition. It's like in non-cooperative industries, like if somebody complains, they're the thorn in your side and you want to get rid of them. Or at least that's the kind of like seems like what the norm was. Or like if you have a job, take it or leave it. At co-ops, you can lead by example. If somebody's complaining about something you do or the system of your co-op, that's an opportunity to have them help fix it, or engage in the solution, to show that they are a huge part of this. And, it's all of our responsibility to make a better business. And I don't think you can lead by example or follow through in a better way than like swallowing your pride and listening to somebody who has maybe a difficult or challenging idea. And I really believe in that one. So some things that we're really considering at Capital Home Care, I just wanted to like update because recruitment is such an issue. I've talked about like our branding and all of these posts and ideas that we've had, but it really, what I said earlier, that caregiving wasn't the most attractive job. We've really struggled with recruitment. It's been happening just across the board is the conversation. So one thing that we're working on is reimagining ourselves. And so this is something, I have a friend, Eric, who helps with our website, and he kind of gave me this idea that like part of dealing with challenges as businesses is readapting our businesses to meet that challenge, and so right now we don't have to advertise to clients. We need to get workers so that we can meet the service need in our community because there's so many people who need care. So we're starting to ask ourselves, like, how do we think of ourselves as a recruitment agency? How do we create more value proposition for these jobs? How do we meet these millennials where they are? And this is something that we're literally working on right now. Like I mentioned it, but it's not a finished idea. But part of it is reimagining our jobs, like kind of back to the beginning, the 2-year career is real, it could be, this is a literal conversation I just had. It could be ridiculous to hope to have caregivers for 30 years. What if we acknowledge that this is kind of a burnout job that people will do for a limited time? How do we make a job that somebody does for 3 years valuable to them and valuable for us, and how do we sell that in such a way that it's a really meaningful thing? Because if we can create really meaningful jobs, that's what we can sell. And these are things that we currently do and that we're working on doing better all the time. Focusing on education, the board at our co-op is always working on member onboarding. Once somebody becomes a member, what kind of PowerPoint do we use? Do we meet them and have coffee with them? Do we do surveys? How do we make sure that our whole board has some understanding of financial literacy or governance or facilitation? Because we need them to be able to do these things. And we want our members to be able to go onto the board and enter into that conversation with enthusiasm and excitement. Engage those employee skills. So I've said this like 1,000 times at this point, but like it really is, I for me, I think what I find valuable about being in a co-op is that I've found so many skills that I've been able to offer and have been considered valuable, and that me and everybody else have really different things to offer. And that's what makes it such a unique and beautiful workplace. and figuring out what the goals of our people are and what my goals are, and elevating those talents and making space for them to grow is just huge. Again, don't shy away from hard questions. Don't shy away from those complaints. Um, Delegate. So this is really hard for weathered members, which is why I bring this up for like the people who've been like holding the ship for a while. It is really hard to create the space and trust to give somebody a big task. If I've been overseeing managing the budget for years and suddenly the new board treasurer wants to be the one that creates the budget, wants me to educate them to do that. That's a hard power piece to give up, but it's a really valuable thing to have somebody who wants to learn how to make a budget. And so I think delegating and giving people to grow and make important mistakes is huge. Like maybe that treasurer doesn't do a perfect job with the budget, but maybe we all learn a lot about what can be at stake or what's not at stake with the budget, right? So it, done well, allowing people to make mistakes is like the best thing we can do. So I'm just going to talk about Clarissa. She's somebody I think about a lot when I think about somebody who really created value proposition with her job. So she started working at CHC, or like actually more like 3 years ago. And at the time, she was an Evergreen student. She was so young and so sweet. She worked 3 other jobs. Like she worked as a camp counselor for kids with really severe physical disabilities over the weekends. She also worked. Oh my God, there were so many things. Doing work with kids with autism. She was also working with us. She was also doing an internship for like a film study, and yeah, finishing her degree. Her passion was filmmaking and photography, and she talked about that from the beginning. And she was so engaged and so smart and thoughtful that just from the beginning we started being like, oh well, let's build your resume, and like help you work towards that goal, but also like allow you to do this job as well as you can. And she said, my name is Clarissa and I'm a so I'm not ready to play that yet. But eventually she started working for CHC full time. She served on the board as a vice president. She took on work as a recruitment manager. She created a vast portfolio of posts for us and testimonials. And she created like a video release form and would go and like meet up with different clients and gather film and headshots for us. Like she was just like for fun, like she was so great. And so she was a fantastic caregiver. She was a fantastic cooperator, but she also was able to make a job that really worked for her, and created a future for her that she wanted. Here is an example of a video that she made. A caregiver at Capital Home Care Co-op in Olympia. If you've ever been a caregiver before, you know it can be a very hard job. I've been hearing from my caregiver friends who work at really big agencies and facilities about how their work environment makes their jobs harder. I've seen some people even lose their passion for caregiving altogether just because they've been overworked and underappreciated. That stinks. Here's the thing. We believe that caregivers do their absolute best when they are feeling respected and excited to go to work. And we are the proof. I've been lucky enough to keep working with Capital Home Care for over 2 years now. Why do I want to stay? When I got hired, I was a full-time college student. I was able to get a super flexible schedule that respected my time and my needs. CHC is run by caregivers and for caregivers, so I know that any decisions that are made are in my best interest. I knew I could get involved in any way I wanted, from joining a caregiver-run committee all the way up to being voted on the board. Our caregivers are always ready to support one another, whether it's covering a shift or needing extra resources or just being able to talk to another caregiver. We also have really lovely elderly clients that have so many stories to tell and lessons to give, and they appreciate us just as much as we appreciate them. I wanted to tell you a little bit about how you can join our team.
Capital Home Care is hosting a virtual job fair event for anyone who's interested in working in a more equitable work environment. All you need is your computer, some Wi-Fi, and at least a year of caregiving experience. Unpaid experience counts. You can visit our website, capitalhomecare.coop, to learn more, or you can click on the link below to register. And don't forget to follow us on social media for announcements and updates. We cannot wait to meet you, and we are so excited to see how we can work together to provide the best in-home care Thurston County has ever seen.
All right, so like you can just see, like she's awesome. She did that in her own time, unsolicited. She created, like, she's just so cool. And so now Clarissa, like, she was able to parlay that and get work at a local film agency, and she's living her dream. She regularly checks in, she writes testimonials for us still, and she serves as a recruitment referral. She has sent people here, so it's a really special thing, and that is a totally different value proposition, right? Than having a job for 30 years. What she did is a different kind of success than that, and she created so much for us. It was really very special working with her. Ooh, so that was an accidental slide. So, basically my big point is by investing in millennials, working to empower millennials, that's the best way to grow your business and help recruit for your business, and especially in a cooperative direction. And you can tell, like, we're still really working to think outside of the box on this one at CHC. It's a real challenge. But we're definitely, I think you've got a good idea of what we've been thinking about and the direction we're going in. So that's pretty much my presentation. I just want to thank our conference sponsors, so many wonderful organizations, for making this week possible. Worker Co-op Week is such a phenomenal thing, and I know that I learned so much every time. So just thank you to the U.S. Federation and to all of our wonderful other cooperators out there. And yeah, that concludes things. And I would love for people who want to hang around and have discussion or have questions. Please don't hesitate. We'd love to hear from you.
I have a question.
Yes, go. Is that Angela?
Yeah, I was starting to write it, but I accidentally pushed enter. But you mentioned a few times about volunteering and like doing things on own time. And I happen to be at the later end of the millennial, and millennials also are the most in-depth folks, because of the rising market of housing, the rising cost of living, without having like an equitable pay of living. And so and they're also like the most like they are very flexible with like having these jobs, but like it didn't necessarily make me feel empowered to see someone in school full time and have 3 jobs and then also volunteering. Like that seems really exhausting, and it doesn't seem like, and this is from someone who had to do it just to survive, right? And so like my question is like how like I don't know, like I'm just like concerned about also like protecting like people's labor and protecting, like if like trying to make sure that even though that we're doing like cooperative work and we're doing those things, that we're also as much as possible paying people for their time and their labor, so that they're not like volunteering if we're doing something for the company. I think that it's important that everyone, folks get paid for the time that they're putting in, because we live in a world that if you don't have the money, you don't have rent, you don't have a place to live, right? And it seems, I don't know, I also come from the mindset of rest being revolutionary, but also like I'm a Black woman, so I have no choice but to like really lay into the facts of like that people are overworked, and it destroys the soul essentially when people are overworked. And we tend to be like, oh, know, we're conditioned in a society that says that the more you do, the better, the cooler, the more efficient you are. But I don't believe that's true. And so I'm just wondering, like, are there things and there's way, or do you have ideas and ways for like, when you think something is like a volunteer opportunity, or like how to honor and value people's like labor without it being something that's just free, and crossing that line and that thin veil of like exploiting labor and not exploiting labor. I don't think that like at all like exploiting labor came through on this, but like I think that that's a thin line of like, this person is already doing so much. Let's allow this person to do something for free. In our collective, I'm always like, no, if you're doing this, you need to be paid. Like if you're doing anything that's bettering and propelling our organization forward, whether in the co-op world or in the, normal capitalist world, like your labor deserves to have some type of like value put back into it, so that you can have some type of like feasible way to use that. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, no, I think you're making a great point. Absolutely. And I think, yeah, kind of pointing out like we shouldn't glorify, somebody working themselves to the bone. I completely I agree with that, and it's a well taken point. I can speak to sort of, again, like my experience with our co-op and the home care industry, because first, yeah, the caregiver industry is, I mean, it's just classically exploited, to your point, like people putting together inconsistent low hourly wages, they typically are working themselves to the bone to make it work. And that's a huge issue in the home care world. I can say, with our co-op, and I think this is kind of an issue for a lot of worker co-ops or just co-ops that are starting up, is at the beginning especially, it does, you need somebody who has time or resources, or has nothing but gives everything to usually get it off the ground. But I can say that, to your question, like with Clarissa specifically, you know I can just let you know that was one of the only things she was ever supervised on, is we're like, you're working too much. We've got to just, we've got to take it down a notch. The other side of that is our board has been really working to make sure people get paid for that work. So, it's not a solved problem. And it's a hard, it's never been a resolved conversation in my own head, where when you're starting a co-op, like, we don't pay the wages that we want to pay yet. We've given $5 in raises since we opened 4 years ago, but we still have such a long way to go. So it's, I don't have an answer for how you would have somebody participate in a board in a startup that doesn't have a budget to pay for those things, and still elicit that same value proposition for a job. I can say, for instance, like Clarissa was one of those people who didn't want to stop working at the camp because she loved the kids, and she like really, I don't think it was just work for her in some ways. But I think your point is huge, and it's a challenge that we currently deal with in our co-op, and I think all home care co-ops are probably struggling with too. Um, I'm gonna make sure I'm checking the chat, but that was like such a good point. And thank you so much. Okay, Olivia also says, thanks for bringing this up, Angela. Hear so many people advise millennials, me, and Gen Z to develop professional skills through volunteering or working for exposure and or experience with wages. Hard to reconcile this advice with reality. To me, advocating for worker rights means making sure people are paid for their labor, even pre-entry level when they're exploring careers. And thanks for, I'm happy to try responding. You know, yeah, this is huge, and I think it's especially something that millennials are facing. It's like, most of these jobs don't pay enough to live, but I think we're all working to address that at least. I hope I addressed your question okay, Angela. And yeah, I just appreciate that so much.
Yeah, you did. Thank you. I think Olivia is correct as well, because I think what happens is then we also like walk that line of only like certain people can access the caveat of cooperative work, because it takes resources to like survive, not even thrive, not even live. Like it takes resources to live, to survive. And if you have resources, like if you have parents or you have people who are able to give you those resources, which everyone doesn't have, then we're further marginalizing folks who continue to be marginalized when, you know, co-ops and collective work and collective economics is supposed to like broaden that scope and allow like folks who are marginalized to participate in capitalism or participate in economics in a way that's thriving for everyone and life-giving for everyone. But, you know, asking people to work for free, to like explore their career and their professional skills is like, well, then how am I going to buy food to eat so that I can have energy to go to work, right? And only people with access who already have resources then still have access to more resources that are supposed to be, I don't want to say reserved, but like built in a way that allows folks who are marginalized to participate in economics in a way that we aren't able to participate in like normal and like this already oppressive like capitalism.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and you did just make me think of one thing, you know, that I can say CHC is good at is like we have an incredibly active board, you know, so I will say like they identified the problem of board members not getting paid or somebody doing marketing as you know a volunteer activity when it should get paid or things like that. And I mean I think I will say I think morally very much agree with you. And there is seems to be at CHC kind of an adage, no unpaid work. And so, you know, last year the board approved stipends of $100 each for the 2021 budget. And now they want to have hourly wages for any hours put in, and they want there to be a budget for members as well. You know, so just to put out there, you know, in some ways that you could make the argument that the problem, and I don't think our co-op is the only one that has this problem, but it does create us, you know, a need for a solution that everybody gets into, and it is part of the culture of our co-op, you know, is that it's getting better at least. I don't know, I mean it's like these are things we want to fix, right? Anyway, that's you just made me think of that, but that's all I gotta say. All right. I think, gosh, I didn't realize that I had ended this so early. It's about 10:11. You know, so we have about 20 minutes
I
left.
have a hand up, if that's okay.
Yes, Alyssa, I did not see it, but please go ahead.
Thank you, and I'm sorry to everyone participating that I have sort of bedhead still going on. I'm on the West Coast, so anyway, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for the conversation. I really appreciated the points brought up. I'm part of why I'm listening in today. I volunteer with a student housing co-op in the Bay Area, California. So the model is that the organization has, you know, houses and apartment buildings, and then students come in and as they sign a lease, and as members, they're also owners. So they get a vote in their own house, they form the board, but they have a professional staff that helps run the organization and, you know, do things like maintenance and finances, that kind of stuff. And I just took a lot from this conversation. You know, it's such a wonderful opportunity because these students as young people and also, you know, reentry students and also graduate students have the opportunity to experience a cooperative environment and what it means to like have agency in, you know, in your housing. And then here in the Bay Area, they leave and they go and try to find housing in this crazy landscape here where it's, you know, I know housing is a problem all across the US, but I'll say that in the Bay Area, it's sort of become comparable with places like New York just because of how commodified land and housing are, right? And how sort of the folks want to move to these places. And so there's a market for it. And so these students leave and they have to sort of deal with landlords and they have to figure out how to get by. And then they also have these, you know, jobs where they don't have any autonomy, right? Because we do have worker co-ops here, but not enough, right? Not enough for the let's say 500 students that leave the co-op each year to all get jobs there if they wanted. And so I just want to note that there's a lot of opportunity, you know, in our world today to address the important points that you brought up, Angela, about what, you know, opportunities millennials have to get by. Yeah, I think a lot about the kinds of things you said. You know, personally, I did benefit from things like unpaid labor. I also have reasons why I had access to do those things, you know, and so I acknowledge it's a trap, basically, to sort of have that be the path for folks to get further in life. And so, you know, there's so much opportunity with cooperatives, and I've been inspired by this conversation. Like, how can I encourage that student housing co-op to do things like make internships or fellowships that give their students more experience, maybe in the business or in some area they want to help benefit that business before they leave school. And so then it is paid time because it's an internship or a fellowship, but it still does something for the co-op to their need. You know, I'm just trying to think, how do I take things from this conversation and apply them somewhere, or make some suggestions? And so I just really appreciate the conversation, and I'm interested in any other ideas or sort of critiques of, like, how do we set up the next generation for, you know, more equity, more economic equity, and not such a struggle. You know, the grind and the hustle is not a model. So I really appreciated the presentation and our conversation.
Hey, Lisa, yesterday there was a session that was called Offers and Needs. And it was actually really, really, really interesting. It was kind of a small group like this, maybe 13 folks. And it was the most practical. We all went through the process of like basically everyone were asked some questions, but then we basically come up with this statement of what we can offer, basically our skill sets. And I think it's really important with millennials because, like, in the presentation that Nora had, like, millennials, and I think like the younger generations as well, like, have so many skills that they can offer, but don't necessarily always fit into the niche of the job that they're working in or they're living in, but they still have skills and things that they can offer the world and people at large. And so everyone comes up with if you get a chance, whenever they release the links for all of them, I would suggest, or, you know, just to answer that question of how you can have reciprocity or that, like, equitability in a workspace or in a cooperative space. But basically everyone has an offers statement. And then after that, you answer some more questions, but then everyone has a need statement. And basically you're putting out there what you need right now. Like, I need an opportunity to practice being a financial advisor because I'm trying to do it. And and all of these things after your statement, or your statement includes, I can be paid or I can receive pay through barter. I can receive pay and I can pay in dollars. I can pay in time banking. And so there's it was like it was so good. And even though it was short in the small amount of time that we have in these sessions, I still haven't been able to, like, completely grasp everything, like how expansive that could be. But when you said that, that was the first thing that came to my mind, is that it was so reciprocal. And in that moment, and even with this, like, practice round, everyone was, like, connecting with different folks, and it allows you to have, like, relationship along with, like, along with trade, and along with, like, I want to say capitalism, but it's not capitalism. Like, you have this, like, economics, you have, like, relationship built into economics. At the same time, there's, like, reciprocity. And at the end, and what the presenter, I think his name was Mike, he said, like, at the beginning of the presentation, is that everyone feels whole, both parts who are in a part of this agreement. Like, you get to feel whole about it. If you are like, well, actually, I don't have $20, but I do have, like, $15 to do this thing, but also I can give, like, 3-hour time credits for time banking, then maybe, or I can barter this thing as well. I can teach you an hour of yoga, and then you do this thing, and you know what I'm saying? So it's this way that people are still gaining and also giving, and also, like, growing themselves, the relationship, and that cooperative at the same time. And just that economic idea of, like, reciprocity was really powerful. So I don't know, that's just an idea. And if you get chance, you should check it out and see what they're talking about. It's really cool. Thank you for your thoughts.
Awesome. I will check that out. That's really cool. Also cool ringtone, I think that. But yeah, this is such a cool conversation, and it's, I think there is a larger conversation in the co-op community about just like what different values you get from a co-op, and like how I am interested in just your first point, Angela, like, because I think it's even a debate like in our co-op, is money the only value that should be traded for time, or like is having a board seat and being able to like parlay a better resume or whatever, or gaining different skill sets that you wouldn't, like, should you consider those values, or is that an oppressive tactic, right? Like, I like, I waffle, but I know as a worker, and from as a caregiver, and I've made this point in our co-op many times, like, I would never work for free, like I would never take a job that didn't value my time, and so it's a very interesting debate. All right, so it's about 10 of the end of this. Does anybody else have questions or points they want to make just following up on this conversation? All right, well, I'm going to leave my email in the chat if anybody wants to follow up, but otherwise I appreciate everyone being here. Awesome. All right, I think we are going to close out early so everyone can take a break before their next session. Yeah, you guys are all awesome. It's always fun to talk about millennials and be like, no, we don't just eat avocado toast. So yeah, thank you all, and I hope that you, respectively, wherever you are in the country, have a wonderful rest of your Thursday. Bye.